From that, he then said, well, why don't you, he was the one who said, I think you should write, the guy's name who manages the website's named Michael, and he turns out to be in Palm Springs, actually. I didn't know that. When I submitted a chapter or two, and I didn't hear anything for a long time. And so I talked to my editor, and I said, well, you know, I submitted it, and I didn't hear anything. And he said, that's really unusual. He said, Michael's usually very quick. Well, it turned out Michael was breaking up with a boyfriend and moving back from Hong Kong, and just had, you know, let the website. And when we sort of wrote again, he said, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, and he read the first couple chapters and said yes. And so what happened then is he put on the website, now this is the complete novel, it's called Why Did He Die? If you go to awesomedude.com, my writing name is Seth Newman, and that started a long time ago. That actually is a name before I was really out when I was writing. The first thing I ever published was a short piece in what is now a defunct magazine called Naked magazine. Actually, I had 4 pieces that were in this magazine in the mid-90s, but I wrote under a pen name because at that point I was not out. And but I can talk about that. Was also a fun process too. But anyway, I submitted the whole novel to Michael, and he said, the way we're going to do this is I'm going to put a new chapter on every 2 or 3 weeks. So he didn't put the whole novel on, and that's actually a picture that Andrew took of Hong Kong at night, because he wants a visual. It's almost like the cover of the book that he puts, and you can click on the chapters, and of course you can go to the home page, or you can go to my page, which is all the things that I've written accumulated together. And you know, obviously those of us who participate contribute a little money to him to help him do it. He does it just as a hobby. But it's made it a lot easier if you really want to get what you've written published. All right, so I've talked about again, you see I like to write, this happened to not have been historic fiction, but it was about something I knew, my interest in Asian men. But this novel is both Asian characters and white characters, something I know a bit about, and a lot about travel around the world, something that I've been very fortunate to have been able to do. Just to give you a little bit, the novel starts out on an airplane leaving San Francisco on the way to Hawaii, goes on to Hong Kong, ends up in the Caribbean, and finally it ends up somewhere in Asia. I won't tell you where, but once again, it was a very good process. But I wrote this novel, believe it or not, in 1990 to 91 and 92. Put it away, and only finished it the end of last year. Just put it away, didn't do anything with it, sat on the shelf. I'd get it out and read it. And that's sometimes the way these projects come about. Now, but there are other inspirations. So, for example, that picture. That picture of that naked man inspired me to become very, very knowledgeable about a very famous early photographer of naked, attractive men. That picture was taken by George Platt Lyons, a very famous gay photographer in the 1930s. He died in 1955. That picture was taken in 1938, but never seen publicly because of the the censorship laws until after he died. So he was one of the founders of both fashion photography, but this guy was a famous dancer with the New York Ballet, and George Platt Lyons was very much a part of that world and convinced most of these men were not gay but straight to pose nude. And when I saw that story, saw that picture, I said, I wonder what that guy was thinking when he sat for that photograph. So I wrote a short story, again, that is on, this is how it really begins. A bead of sweat slips down from my armpit. As I step into the shooting space, my bare feet stick to the damp floorboards. The space is cluttered with chairs, tables, and screens. Mr. Lyons positions a table in the center of the space and moves deliberately to strategically place light standards. His movements are smooth and economical. His graying hair is combed upward with every strand in place. And then the story goes on to sort of reveal how I thought this young man might have felt with his clothes off in front of the camera at a time when that just wasn't done at all. And that particular piece was first published on the Rainbow Community Writing Project website when it was still up and going. But at the same time, I wrote an essay that went along with it. And what was the motivation? Well, George Platt Lyons was born in 1907, and in 2007, in April, it was the anniversary of his 100th birthday. And so I wrote this, an essay, which also was published in the Rainbow Community Writing Project website. And it says, and you can see the difference here. A gay man in the early 21st century has a difficult time connecting with the trepidation that a young dancer named Nick Magellanis felt as he walked into the studio of George Platt Lyons on Madison Avenue in New York City in 1938. The professional skill and the engaging manner of one of the most vibrant photographers of the 20th century convinced these young men to shed their clothes and be photographed. You see the difference between, as I did in the photograph, you're painting a picture with words. In the essay, you're giving your opinion. There's the difference between the two forms of writing. And, but as I say, they both, this went on to talk about George Platt Lyons and he was actually part of a very famous menage a trois, 3 gay men who lived in Paris in the 1920s, and all 3 of the men, were lifelong friends, lived in New York City, and I actually knew, believe it or not, the brother of one of the 3 men in this menage a trois, not George Platt Lyons' family, but another one of them. And what motivates you? I saw a book review in the New York Times book section. That motivated me to find out who George Platt Lyons was. That motivated me to say, I want to write something about what he has done. So that's another thing. Another type of writing is the essay, or now what we call op-ed piece. And what I was talking about a moment ago, painting with words. The one thing you want to think about when you write is you want to show, you don't want to tell. I went here, I did this, and this is what I ate, this is what the weather was. I don't care about that. I care about the words that you're painting. You look out the window, the clouds are floating by, and so I think that the issue here is, and it is the writer's mantra, don't tell me, show me with words.